Today's project is putting a handle on a tiny hammerhead. I found that at a store called, oh, there's my wood. I found that at a store called the Scrap Exchange, and likely that piece of wood came from a very similar source. But first things first, mark off the head completely accurately and with no mistakes. Flawless. The first thing that I tried that I gave up on because I can't really slam into my bench, and this is a method best used with a finished knife, cleaver, axe, what have you. It worked-ish, but it had a lot less control than I wanted, and I committed a little longer than I should have for making the eye of a hammer. And as the process goes on, I realize there's the perfect tool for taking off a significant portion of meat with a lot less wild swinging. A good old-fashioned rasp. And, a second clamp. And the procedure for getting the eye of the hammer inside of the thing, whatever the word is for the piece of, for getting the handle into the hammer, excuse me. It's really just a matter of getting it to the line and then checking it over and over and over again. And remember to not use your hand as the second clamp when there's a second clamp directly to your right, you fucking numbnut. There you go. And it really is exceedingly fast. It also creates more dust than I'm comfortable with in this space. So I kind of rethink that as well. But then I discover more or less how I'm going to finish the entire thing. By very slowly removing clamps and wasting all of our time. Just going to linger on that shot. Not going to edit it. That would be silly. Goodbye, dust. No. It is a carving knife. And this thing is eating through this wood like butter, which tells me a couple things. This hammer is never going to be heavy duty. It's a tiny hammerhead to begin with. But also that this wood would probably be not so good for a hammer even like 8 ounces, 4 ounces heavier. Because I think that after carving it too, like feeling the grain direction, it doesn't all feel perfectly straight, or at least relatively straight and in line for wood. But it all works out. It still makes a hammer. But anything heavier, not so good. There's even some fissures that while I cut away, there could be some hiding anywhere inside of there. It's very, very dry. It's also very light, all things considered. But it was just so damn relaxing to just carve. I also got a very high, I feel like I got a pretty high level of accuracy with this because it was controlled, slow. I could see every step along the way that there was no need to go hog wild. Once it started kind of fitting, like I could slow down even more, and it was just really nice to not have it clamped to the surface, constantly filing. But we're finally making headway. It's also much easier to clean up wood shavings and wood chips as opposed to wood dust. You can't really breathe in a fingernail length size of wood. Well, I mean, you wouldn't want to. You can do anything you put your mind to. I kind of got the thickness at the top the way it needs to be, and I can just move that straight down the width and length of the hammerhead, or the eye of the hammerhead. And there are people that are way, way better at this than I am, but I'm having a good time. So, another test. I can go down a little bit further, probably double the length of what you see on the part that's been marred by the inside of the hammer eye. Hanging a hammer. Ta-da! So, the eye's done. I guess it is the eye of the hammer. The part that goes into the hammer eye. And now, some sped up swearing and hammering to get that son of a bitch off. There we go. But this is the magical decision-making moment where this is going so fast, and it's just really nice to use this little carving knife that's how this project gets finished. It is a hand-carved hammer handle. And it really does just get ate up. It really does just get ate up, Adrian. Is that gooder enough or English? I think it is. Now, one of the things that I do end up doing is making a little swell at the top and a little swell, and the bottom has a bit of its swell as well. But on the subject of knife safety, I end up gently tapping myself with the tip probably twice. Oh, I hear you, Adrian. It still takes effort. And just from the barest whisper of the tip touching, band-aids had to get put on. So you will see that evolve. That's the little guy. I think it's a morakniv. Morakniv? I got it for Christmas. It's probably the sharpest thing I've ever picked up. which I might have said before, but I think that bar keeps changing. But it being one of the sharpest things that I've ever held, it makes this, it's cutting geometry for carving is just so well refined. It's the bar for carving knives that I make. If I get even 3/4 of the way to what this knife is doing, I've made a good knife. So this is now the prettiest thing ever, and I need to get to that level. Yeah, I wanted to see if it would slice through a wood chip. It's still a knife. It's not going to do that. But keeping the shape relatively symmetrical for the whole thing was not as hard as I was anticipating. It's pretty easy just to eyeball it and say, there's a little swell here, there's a little swell there. I don't end up hand sanding it. The end finish is all hand carving, and it's not entirely uncomfortable to use. You'll see later that I'm not entirely great with it. I don't have a lot of experience hammering tiny nails, but I do have more experience now and more experience hammering my middle finger. Like you do. What's funny is I saw a manufactured hammer handle for this exact hammer on just a random video. I think the guy was restoring a painting, and it's a very skinny handle, and it's a very rectangular ovoid style handle, which makes a lot of sense, but I realize that this one's a little bit thick and possibly eccentric for what it is. Unnecessary. There we go. But I like it a lot. It doesn't feel bad to hold. I got big hands. It's not commentary on anything else. But just like this little knife can take bigger cuts, it takes small cuts very nicely. Like, I don't feel like there's any point where I don't have control using the dang old thing. I will say too that it hurts doing this for I think this probably took an hour and a half. It hurt the ever loving shit out of my thumbs, just because doing this action for that long, it's a little rough. But my thumbs are stronger now. And instead of sawing off the extra bit, I was like, no, I can carve it off. In retrospect, it's as stupid as I thought it was when I started doing it. I was like, I don't need to do this. This is not necessary. So it did it anyway. And once all the outside fibers have been compromised, I make a huge mistake. Almost. I almost make a huge mistake. But end grain is much harder to cut through. And while it does take some effort, This knife makes it fucking easy. I'm not being paid. Don't ever confuse this for me getting paid for something. I just like it when I like it. Yeah. Yeah, it's worth a heavy sigh. But that's it. That is more than ready to have the next part, which is cutting a slot for a wedge, which I also have to make. But remember not to use a straight edge or mark very accurately. Just draw a line and put the world's worst sounding tool directly onto it and just go to town. There it is. A hacksaw into wood is probably one of my least favorite sounds. A hacksaw itself, while I've come to terms with it being a good and useful tool, is also one of my least favorite tools. It'll cut through anything, but only after you buy an actual blade, not the one that comes with it. As I've learned, the one that comes with it is a giant pile of garbage, and it has to be replaced immediately. I could be wrong, that's fine, but based on personal experience, it is what it is. So I'm digging around for a small piece of wood that I already used that is almost immediately ready to just be a wedge. And skip the sanding, slicing, carving, decision-making process, add another band-aid or two, and it's ready to go. All it needs to be done is fit into the eye of the hammer, and it's ready. So, simply put glue on the dude, put the hammer on the guy, and then jam the wedge into the guy, so the dude gets jammed into the eye of the tiger, and that's how you put a hammerhead onto a hammer. I feel like this is pretty self-explanatory and does not need much commentary. I should have thinned out the wedge just a little more using the sandpaper on the right. But, that being said, this will be quite permanent. At least for my purposes, it's not going anywhere. Smooth. I agree. It's so ugly. That's fine. Using this monstrosity, we simply carve off our mistakes. See? It's in there. It's not coming out. It's never going to be used so hard that that is going to be the point that fails. The part that'll fail might be the circular-ish grain around that swell in the hammer handle. But that's about it. Some final refinements. Now that I get to see it with the handle and the hammer together, I realize how stubby the handle is, but also how big that head, the hammer head is in comparison. Which makes it look like, to me, a silly but very unique hammer. We have a happy little hammer. And now you get to see how shitty I am at hammering. And I've already hit my middle finger once. But thanks for watching. It's a functional hammer. It's not uncomfortable to use. I'm not great at hammering tiny nails. That being said, I might also not be great at hammering large nails. I don't hammer very often unless I'm blacksmithing. Sorry, I'm amused at my own hammering technique. But yeah, I hope everybody's projects are going well and that everybody has a nice day, night, whatever. I'm just going to wait till I start swearing at myself, because not only does it happen, it's not great. Damn it. Ow. Yes, that that hurt quite a bit. Oh, you fucking idiot. All right. Goodbye, everybody.